Good morning, and welcome to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm glad you've made the connection and are with us today. I'm Laurie Fitz, your host. And over the last month, we've been talking about the Derek Chauvin case. And last week, we got the verdict. Guilty on all 3 counts. But on the day of the verdict, we all know Dante Wright of Brooklyn Center was shot and killed. And we have children being shot by the police. We have Adam Toledo in Chicago, Makia Bryant in Columbus. And we can feel so overwhelmed. Sometimes we don't know even how to process it. What do we think about this? What do we need to do? And I've long been interested in exploring what our voice is. We talk about our voice, have our voice be heard when we vote. We talk about the progressive voice of Minnesota as our radio station. We talk about voice in so many ways. The sound of our voice, singing being in good voice, voice and opinion. Let your voice be heard, being part of a voice so the collective voice can be heard. And I have a hunch that our voice really comes down to our collective understanding of ourselves, who we are, what we want to say, what we want to stand for. And today I am going to have us focus on the artist's voice and what we can learn about understanding perhaps our own voice and the voice that is brewing inside us that we want to express. What is the artist's voice for justice? How are they exploring through their art, their voice, and how can we hear that voice and be in conversation with that voice? So I've got wonderful artists that will be joining us. Laura Migliarino, she is an artist. She's a teacher. She's a Fulbright Fellow. I have known Laura for over 40 years, which is sort of hard to say out loud. I bought art from her 40 years ago. I love her art. And Laura brought to my attention another wonderful artist, Rufus Jones Jr., who's a musician, songwriter, singer, president of the James Weldon Johnson Foundation, and he also wanted me to mention that he's a good husband and a good father, too. So I have...
My wife's listening.
Oh, good.
And son.
I fulfilled my promise. So I want to start with Laura. And Rufus, thank you so much for joining us today, because there's a really lot of powerful things that Laura brought to my attention about the work that you're doing. But I want to start with Laura. Laura, tell me about what you've been doing. I know that you're a Fulbright scholar, fellow. Just delighted for you on that.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, but share with me. I know that you've taken pictures. You've been reflecting on the mood of Minneapolis and through this whole time from the very beginning. Tell me about what you think about the voice that you bring as an artist, and also how you met Rufus.
And how I met Rufus. Okay, well, I'll start with the voice, because I think it's pretty fascinating. And as somebody who teaches college to art students and non-art students, we do talk about the voice. So you have a great point there. And I think that the artist's voice, particularly I'll speak to the visual artist here, because that's what I am. Trained as a drawing and painting, but been working in photography now for 20 plus years. The artist has often been the voice for change. And visual artists, that role starts because hundreds of years ago we had, frankly, a very illiterate society. So they couldn't read. And so imagery was hugely important in terms of communicating, educating, informing the public. So when I think about sort of historically some of the artists whose work influenced change, one of the first artists I think about is Jacques-Louis David, a French revolutionary artist whose images were very instrumental in pushing forward the French Revolution, did a great painting, The Death of Marat. Marat was revolutionary, very important, who was murdered in his bathtub. So then, fast forward a little bit, I think about Matthew Brady, one of the first photojournalists who photographed the American Civil War. And then if we jump forward again, I think about Otto Dix and George Gross and Kathy Kolowitz, who were working during German Expressionist period. And unfortunately, in some ways, even the worst members of our history, such as Hitler, understood the power of imagery. Mm-hmm. He's a failed art student. He got it. So
emblematic.
Emblematic, yeah. So these are, so this is a long history. And then if we jump forward to the AIDS epidemic, I think of David Wojnarowicz and Greg Borowitz, Douglas Crimp. We look at women, for example, in the feminist art movement, Judy Chicago, and then even today, artists like Kara Walker. That's a perfect example. Carrie Mae Weems, the great photographer, African American, both of them. So the artist's voice, his vision, has been part of this history for hundreds of years. So for me, as a photographer, after the death of George Floyd, I was so discombobulated. I was so upset. I was so distressed that the only way I could cope with it was to get the camera out, start photographing, because I couldn't do anything else. I was so completely distracted and distraught. And I went down to the intersection, 38th in Chicago, within about 48 hours of the event, started photographing. And that intersection is a big part of Minneapolis history. My wife's father's plumbing store was on that corner. Mm. It's an ordinary corner in an ordinary neighborhood in an ordinary upper Midwestern city. Mm-hmm. So the fact that it would stand out on an international stage is shocking. So it gave me an opportunity to cope, and then, of course, then I can use those images to help communicate, educate, and share my feelings with other people.
And your pictures do capture, I believe, that sense of the Minnesota ordinary corner, but the extraordinary event that took place. Mm-hmm. And that cross-section of ordinary and extraordinary and epic, all get celebrated through that.
I mean, if you want to think about an ordinary place, it's Minneapolis.
Yeah.
I grew up in Chicago, which has had, internationally known history for, hundreds of years. So I will dovetail into how do I know Rufus,
and,
who's my great collaborator, and I adore him, and I just send you lots of love.
Thank you.
Interestingly enough, Rufus and I have a really good mutual friend by the name of Selwyn Garraway. Selwyn and I were in undergraduate school together in Chicago, and he's known Rufus and Jill for a long time, and he was one of the first of the James Weldon Johnson Fellows. And James Weldon Johnson Foundation, Rufus can talk more about it, has a residency program in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. And so Selwyn was one of the first fellows, and then he nominated me. And so then I got to go, and it was a life-transforming experience. And then I already had known Rufus and Jill, but then I really got to know them much, much better, and it changed my life. Because of this residency, I got the Fulbright in London to continue work and research around James Weldon Johnson and Rosamond Johnson and their legacy. And then we've just remained good pals, and then Rufus and I collaborated on, we have the same conviction about life, and we've collaborated on this particular tragedy, which has been a joyful experience to collaborate. But also it's sad that this is the tragedy that brings us together.
And the collaboration is the Transcription 846 Blues.
Yes.
And that is a song that Rufus created. And Rufus, tell me about that process in creating Transcription 846 Blues.
Thank you, Lord Beth, and thank you, Laura. It is a pleasure to be here today. I want to first acknowledge that in the tragedy, I did find inspiration to use music as my voice for change and action Specifically, I see Transcription 846 Blues as a catalyst to pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, as well as the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act.
Yes.
Both, when I listen to listen intently to the court cases and what was brought out, I think the music, our voices, must be used as they have in history to create change and to act. So the process of Transcription 846 Blues is I took the blues format. In this case, I used the 8-bar blues format, and I took in sort of my inspiration from another Minneapolis hero, Dr. Eileen Southern, who was the first tenured Black woman at Harvard University, my college, and she wrote a book called The Music of Black Americans. So when you look at the history of music as integral in helping us interpret the world and capture moments, every part of our life from birth to death has a role that music plays, that art plays. And whether it was the songs during the anti-slavery movement or the Lift Every Voice and Sing to help eventually get to Brown versus Board of Education and then segue into We Shall Overcome for the Civil Rights Movement. Strange Fruit, again, a song to protest lynching of African Americans. I see Transcription 846 Blues as a protest against police brutality and the inhumanity and the failures of the criminal justice system, all with the goal of equal justice under law. And I think that when the police camera video came out in June, I was sitting on my equity trading desk at a boutique Wall Street firm, and I get a lot of information pushed at me through news. I read news all the time to understand the trading markets, and only thing I was hearing that George Floyd said was "Mama" and "I can't breathe." And so I love my mother, and she was listening now, and I'm an asthmatic, so whenever someone talks about "I can't breathe," I pay attention. But then I thought, what else did he say? And when the police camera video was released to the public, I just, as a trader, I just started poking around to see if I can find this video or the transcript. And about 23 pages showed up. And I read it, and I said, aha. He said, "Mr. Officer" 24 times, "sorry" 9 times, "please." He said, "please" 55 times, and breathe a breath over 22 times, "Mama" 13 times. That's just in the 846 that we were told was important in May and June, but we know it's 929. That's the new number. So that was the initial impetus for me understanding the words, and the initial another James Weldon Johnson fellow in the arts, Dr. Allison from Chaminade University, Allison Painter, she was participating in a theatrical piece on the West Coast called The Breathe Project, and she asked me to write the soundtrack for her 8 minutes 46 second theatrical pice. So I was just thinking of the music.
Right. And with that, I've run through my first segment, of course, which I have a habit of doing. But what I want to do is set up the song so that everyone can hear it in the next segment. We're just going to let folks know.
Gotcha.
The words that you will hear in the next segment are George Floyd's words. You used this is a transcription of his words. and you added your voice with the music in terms of interpreting and helping us perhaps explore what was George going through at those moments. The piece itself also features Laura's photography. And I want to encourage you, we'll be able to hear the music, but of course, since it's radio, we won't be able to see Laura's photography. So
that's fine.
No,
Don't worry.
it's all good. It's all good. But
fine.
I do want folks
good.
to know that you can watch this video and see Laura's photography by going to rufusjonesmusic.com. So stay with us. In the next segment, we're just going to listen to Rufus's music, and then we'll come back and we'll continue the discussion about our voice and voice for change. So thanks for staying with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. I'm Laurie Fitz, your host. And on today's show, we are exploring the artist voice for justice. And we have Laura Migliarino, who is an artist, a teacher, a Fulbright Fellow. And we have Rufus Elmer Jones Jr., who is a musician, songwriter, singer, and who has created a piece for us to listen to. Now, I know this is talk radio, but today I'm going to call it voice radio. So we're going to hear the voice of Rufus Elmer Jones Jr. in his creation of the Transcription 846 Blues. It is a transcription because it is the words of George Floyd. Rufus, if you want to say anything before we go right into the music, I'll give you the floor.
I want people to listen to the words of Floyd. He narrates his death. He is cognizant. His cognitive abilities are clear, and his humanity and love of others is clear. And I think this will be, in my opinion, another piece of music that will help create pass legislation in Washington. That's the purpose of this song, to pass the legislation in federal legislation.
And
so I hope that it comes across.
And it's also an honoring, especially after the verdict has been made, an honoring of George and a continuing of all of us doing the right thing for justice. So with that, I want to let folks know that we're going to play the whole song, and the song is 8 minutes and 46 seconds long. We're going to, just right after the song is over, we're going to go to commercial, so we won't be coming back. But I encourage you to stay with us, listen to the music, and then we'll be back after the commercials to talk more about Transcription 846 Blues, as well as the artist's voice for change. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. I'm Laurie Fitz, your host. And on our show today, we've been exploring the artist's voice for justice. And we have Laura Migliarino, who is an artist and a teacher and Fulbright Fellow 2021. And we have Rufus Elmer Jones Jr., musician, songwriter, singer, president of the James Weldon Johnson Foundation. And I will not forget, you are both a great husband and a great father. As promised, I would introduce you. That last piece that we heard in the last segment, very powerful piece, 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And if you can imagine, the length of that piece is also the length of what we first understood, although we found out later it was even longer. But what we first understood was the knee on the neck of George Floyd. And I think that gives a power to it, not only the words, but the length, the choices that you made to honor and to make your voice be heard and George's voice be heard in this piece. And in this piece, we also have Laura Migliarino's photography. And should you want to listen and share with a friend and be able to see the photography, you can go to rufusjonesmusic.com and you can see this piece as well as others. So, Rufus, my friend, you started to share in the last piece, in our last segment, about how you left Wall Street and it was time to more embrace your music and also your leadership with the James Weldon Johnson Foundation. Can you tell me first about the James Weldon Johnson Foundation, and then if you could work in also, how did that decision-making occur for you in terms of being ready to leave?
Laurie Beth, can you hear me?
Sure can. Can you hear me?
I can't hear anything.
All right. Well, we'll get that fixed.
Well, I'm here and I can hear things.
Okay, good.
I hear you. I hear you now.
Okay, good. All right,
we
good.
haven't started.
No, we're good. We're good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have Laura share a little bit about the James Weldon Johnson Foundation. And then I want you to share some more about your decision-making and leaving the James Weldon, leaving Wall Street and going into music and more embracing the James Weldon Foundation. So, Laura, share with me your experience and what the mission and all of that with the James Weldon Foundation.
Well, the James Weldon Johnson Foundation, it's very interesting how an artist, and James Weldon Johnson was a writer, part of the Harlem Renaissance. He and his brother were also a musical combination. James Weldon wrote lyrics, and his brother Rosamond Johnson wrote the melodies. And James Weldon Johnson and Rosamond Johnson wrote one of the most important civil rights song in history, called "Lift Every Voice and Sing." And everybody, people know it. You go, hey, but they don't know who wrote it. And I find it fascinating when, in his lifetime, James Weldon Johnson was a larger-than-life person. People knew him. He worked with E.B. Du Bois, part of the Harlem Renaissance. He was a mentor to Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes. It was a major names here in the Harlem Renaissance movement. And then his name falls off. And he's not like a household name in a way that he should be. He's one of the founders of the NAACP. And so what I love about the James Weldon Johnson Foundation is not only their generosity to artists and their support of artists, and that includes writers, visual artists, musicians, etc., but it's also to help kind of breathe life back into this man's name, which, in my opinion, should be more of a household name, like Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, this is a very important man. And so one of the things they do is they host an artist residency on the campus of Simon's Rock, Bard College at Simon's Rock. And do correct me on that, Rufus, if I got it wrong.
And what I'll do is I'll transition this over to Rufus with you're president of that foundation now, right? And
yes.
And what I love about James Weldon Johnson's song, which I understand is not the title, but what we know it as is "Lift Every Voice and Sing."
Is what we know it as.
Yeah, is part of why I'm so fascinated about voice. So tell me why you left Wall Street and why you're embracing being president of this foundation.
Why did I leave Wall
Yeah.
Street? I discovered during COVID that there are three things that I can do, even though I may be tired, but I'm not exhausted. I can do anything for my family. I can do music, and I can do the work of the foundation. And one thing that I want to say is a quote from James Weldon Johnson. He says, "The final measure of the greatness of all peoples is the amount and standard of the literature and the art they have produced. The world does not know that a people is great until that people produces great literature and art. No people that has produced great literature and art has ever been looked upon by the world as distinctly inferior." So art and music is a key tool for equality in America and in the world. And so Johnson and his brother, when they wrote Lift Their Voice and Sing, as we call it, he called it National Hymn in January 1900. And he wrote it for school children. And the importance of voice, as Minnesota and Minneapolis influences in so many positive ways through Prince and through Eileen Southern, I think no greater honor it is for Johnson's legacy to be advanced by being on your radio show. It's such an honor to be here today with you and Laura. It's such an honor.
Well, it's an honor to have your leadership and where you're taking the foundation, the James Weldon Johnson Foundation, and exploring what role can art play in equality. I mean, it's a magnificent vision. And we look at art sometimes as something that provides beauty and enjoyment, but how can it provide change? How does it set the tone for change? You know, how does it because right now I think we're facing with great cognitive dissonance, our world, where we are seeing the horrors. And with that cognitive dissonance, we want to believe that we're a country where we're all created equal, and yet we see people of color are not being treated equally. And you can't hold that thought without doing something. And it's either retreat and not deal with it, which just continues the angst, or you do something. And art can help lead the way of what that means. And I remember when you first wrote me, Rufus, about how music can pull in all of our senses. It can go beyond the words to penetrate to our understanding. Tell me a little bit more about that. And of course, I've run over, but I just want you to share a little bit about that. Then we'll go and we'll have a break, and then we'll come back and share more.
Our senses, our taste, our smell, what we see, what Minneapolis showed us, the bystanders' voices, the legal prosecution team voices, the police voices, everything that you all showed us, flowing down the Mississippi River, we can feel and we see what you've done to help us heal. We can't do this all by ourselves. And you showed us black and white, young and old, collaborating relationships, working together. That's what Minneapolis showed us. That's what you all showed us. And I'm so happy that we are able to use this platform to tell this story.
And in our next segment, I'd love to have you share your story of Voices Have No Color.
Oh, yes.
And so
it'll make me cry.
That's right. And bring Grace in. Grace is your guitar. You've got Grace with us today, too. So Grace gets to join us as part of the fourth segment. So we got to go to commercial now. But when we come back, I want to hear more about Voices Have No Color.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. I'm Laurie Fitz, your host. And today we've been exploring the artist's voice for justice. And I have had two absolutely wonderful guests joining me. Laura Migliarino, who is an artist, a teacher, a Fulbright Fellow for 2021. Rufus Elmer Jones, Jr., musician, songwriter, singer, president of the James Weldon Johnson Foundation, and a wonderful father and terrific husband. And in our last segment,
thank you.
Yes, absolutely. In our last segment, There is a song that you created before Transcription 846 Blues. And if you missed the Transcription 846 Blues as a listener, I am going to encourage you to go to rufusjonesmusic.com, listen to Transcription 846 Blues, and also see the beautiful photography of Laura Migliarino. But when I was absolutely.
Yeah, it should be posted now. And when you mentioned it this morning, I said, I need to update my website. So it's there now.
Good. I'm glad. So because people are going to go there. But as I was going through your website, I found a piece, especially since I was wanting to focus on voices, of Voices Have No Color. And it was something you created after the Rodney King incident. So can you tell me the story behind that?
Yes, I was a teacher at the Dalton School in New York. I was teaching 6th grade ancient history, which is 900 BC, Assyrian and Sumerian history. And I used my mother's an educator, Marvis Laverne Nealon Jones, and my father's musician, entrepreneur. And so I actually used the guitar to get my first teaching job when I taught the Bill of Rights with the Bill of Rights Blues. And when I got the job I was during the life of a starving artist, and so I needed a teaching gig, so I was teaching in the day and doing music at night. And in 1991, it's when I arrived at the Dalton School, the camcorder video of Rodney King had been produced or distributed. The verdict in 1992 came out, and all hell broke loose.
Right.
And I was a teacher, and it was the first time that I saw what I call white fear.
Yeah.
The second time I saw white fear, there's white folks who experienced fear, was during 9/11 when I was on Wall Street. And now we saw fear in George Floyd's face, but you don't see white fear a lot. And so it was like, that's very interesting. And Rodney King was saying, can we get along? Well, a few months later, I just put that in the back of my head. I'm listening to Rodney King. I see the video, and I'm teaching children. And then that summer of '92, I'm calling my roommate from college, and I said, hello. He's working at ABC. I said, hello, may I speak to Terry? And the assistant picked up the phone and said, is this Tom? I said, Tom? I said, do I sound white?
Oh, dear.
Tom is white, Terry's black. And she said, voices have no color. I said, that's interesting. So I wrote that down. And I was, as the whole Rodney King video was ruminating and planning in my head, and I'm trying to be an artist, I'm doing blues and trying to figure myself out, I wrote Voices Have No Color. And I performed it at Black History Month at the Dalton School, and they gave me a standing ovation. And in the song, it just reminded. I knew what I had to do with Transcription 846 Blues. It's all the same. It's the video, it's the trial, and the verdict. Fortunately, it was a guilty verdict this time. And the song goes something like this. Can we get along? That's what he says. Can we positively communicate? Use love against hate to eradicate the problems of race and Western civilization. Voices have no color. This is where the 12-bar blues kicks in. Yeah, minor blues. Voices have no color. Whoop. Voices have no color. And that's how the song came to life. I call it dotting the song. That was the first song I actually put a period at the end. Doesn't mean I necessarily completed the song at that particular time, but that meant I had just enough so I could perform the song. and it still has legs. It's still important, and I want this song like "Lift Every Voice and Sing" to be around and valuable 100 years from now.
And it will be.
It's a powerful, and it's a song of hope and an engagement. And I think it asks the question for all of us, what is our voice, and how do we lift it up? How do we stand for something, and how can artists inspire us to change the world?
Yep.
And with that, I have to wrap it up. I wish I could go on for another 3 hours with all of you.
This is a blessing. Thank you so much. Laura, thank you. I love you. Laurie, Beth, thank you
Rufus,
for bringing me into your family.
Absolutely.
I know we're connected by the Mississippi River, but it's great to be connected by music and radio now. Thank you.
Absolutely. And with that, thank you for helping to change the world. You're a wonderful artist.
Laurie, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And next week, we're going to have a great discussion on racial healing. I will be having Melissa Adams come back and share with us ideas about what we can do together to make a difference. So thanks for being part of Connections. Thank you for making the connection.